It's not where I want to go. I want to. Oh, now
Um,
I'm taking myself on tech.
does anybody know who Pew is? I don't want to make a joke about it, but if you could put your name up there, that would be good.
All right, I think I'm running good. Welcome, everyone. Welcome for our council roundtable. Um, we're going to start at 7 o'clock here with our Cub Scout roundtable, and by around 7:30, we'll have swapped over to Scouts BSA. I have just put in right before all these people just joined, a link to say that you're here, so I can get a I'm here as a person, which I do get through Zoom, but I don't get what unit you're related to. I'm trying to start tracking some of that, so maybe thinking in the future some attendance rewards and stuff like that. But right now, just trying to track some data, see where people are coming from, um, how our promotion is working. Um, so welcome. My name's Josh Clark, the Roundtable Commissioner. Looking at Cub Scouts, that's I got the QR code for the exact same thing, Google form that I threw in chat, which I'll throw in chat one more time. There we go. Today we'll have our opening introductions. I'll introduce you to Mike Langer. We'll have a safety moment. Mike Langer will talk to us about youth protection guidelines, what the key points for us to know as Cub leaders, and then we'll quickly chat on some of the winter programs that are happening, winter outings, some ideas for our units to get that outdoor awards or adventure, the outdoor adventure in during the winter. Um, so yes, here with us today, besides some of our usual I've introduced before, Mike Langer is Fort Orange's training chair. He's joining us tonight to help us with the youth protection guidelines and see him a lot more in the future. All right. So for safety minute, kind of our theme this month is looking ahead to winter. It seems like it's been snowing every day, if not raining, all December. So something we're thinking about with our activities. When we're pretty used to in the winter, thinking about layering, how to stay warm. Our layers should be clean so that, those jackets should be relatively frequently washed. We want to prevent overheating, so we have layers and we drop layers, but we never take off base layers like our hats. Our hat's a base layer we never take off, fingers crossed. And they're relatively loose. I know I have some long johns or whatever that are pretty tight. They don't help with the warming if our blood can't circulate. So when we have too many layers of socks, it doesn't really help us very much. And obviously, everything should stay dry. Looking at sledding and winter sports safety, always having our supervision. A scout should understand the dangers of such activity. We should stress prevention, like choosing where to sled down the hill rather than just randomly throw themselves into trees, as happens. Um, uh, uh, Scouting wants us to wear helmets with sledding and skiing and the other winter sports. And thinking about our winter activities, they're a lot more physically demanding. So we're thinking about being more physically fit, making sure our adult leaders are fit and capable to participate. And this is not going to be the really big exertion that um, gets us hurt. Bum. Anything I missed down here? Talking about and gaining support for our basic rules before an activity. Especially when sledding kind of doesn't have any rules, but it kind of should have a little bit of discussion of where not to hit each other. Um, Helps make things a little more structured. All right, I'll pass this on to Mike Langer. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Mike. No, okay, I'm gonna open you up and let me know when you want me to click.
Okay, thanks, Josh. So good evening, everyone. As Josh already introduced me, but just to introduce myself, my name is Mike Langer. I'm the Fort Orange District Training Chair, And I'm going to talk tonight a little bit about some reminders and even some fairly recent updates to some of the youth protection policies. So, Josh, if you could click to the next slide. All right. So first up is sleeping accommodations. So in older scouting programs, Scouts, BSA, and venturing, just as a reminder, youth sharing tents cannot be more than 2 years apart in age. Youth siblings of the same gender, however, with parental or legal guardian consent, can share a tent if they are more than 2 years apart. So regardless of age, those same gender siblings can share a tent as long as we do have the parental or legal guardian permission. A recent update to the policy, though, as indicated here in red, is to just make sure that we know that campsites must be arranged to separate genders adequately. So this could be achieved through natural barriers. It could be achieved through distance. It may be just taking the campsite and just making sure that it is divided. But we have to make sure that the separation achieves privacy for both adults and youth, especially by gender. So we're seeing more with the units where they may have a male and female unit under the same charter organization. They might go on a unit outing together. We have to make sure that we are adequately separating that campsite by the gender. So that was recently clarified by National in updates to the sleeping accommodations section of the barriers to abuse. As a reminder for Cub Scouts, though, we know that Cub Scout families, we can share a tent with the family, so it isn't necessarily requiring that same gender separation because families can share a tent. Next slide, please, Josh. Buddy system. So as a reminder, buddies for two cannot be mixed gender. So it has to be same gender buddies when we have two. If the original duo of buddies happens to be mixed gender, we now need to add a third youth participant to make it a group of three. What has been updated, though, is what's indicated on this slide in red. So since now we can have mixed gender buddies of three, that does allow that you can have two boys with one girl or even two girls with one boy as buddies. But again, if it's a buddy of two, they still have to be same gender. As far as youth siblings go, similar to the sleeping accommodations, youth siblings of the same gender, they can be buddies regardless of age. So as long as we have permission from the parent or the legal guardian, that 3-year age gap that I mentioned previously does not apply to the siblings. So we can have siblings with a larger range of age as long as they're same gender being buddies. As much as possible, we do realize that we want the youth to be the buddies. There may be extenuating circumstances that might necessitate that a parent or legal guardian is a buddy for their own child. So that is allowed at scouting activities or sleeping arrangements. Again, typically under exceptional circumstances, but as much as possible, we always prefer that the buddies act as youth. But just be aware, buddies of two have to be same gender. Buddies of three can still be same gender, or they can now be mixed gender. So that's been clarified recently as part of the barriers to abuse. Next slide, please, Josh. Participation by parents and legal guardians. So this is not new. This took effect last year. All adults staying overnight in connection with the scouting activity must be currently registered as an adult. What I would offer is to consider the unit scout or reserve position. That is a position that adults can be registered as. It requires them to complete youth protection training. They have to pay for the registration. They do go through the background check. But Unit Scout or Reserve does not require them to actually take on a formal leadership position in a unit. They don't have to be a den leader or a cub master or a scout master, assistant scout master, or even a committee member. So it allows them to have a registered position, but they don't necessarily have to take on an actual leadership role in the unit. But it suffices all other policies as far as having registered adults at overnight events. There is also the Cub Scout overnight exception. So again, this is not new, but this is a big reminder. Um, Cub Scout parents or legal guardians do not have to be registered as adult leaders to attend an overnight event with their child or their legal board. However, all adults attending that event must review the How to Protect Your Children from Child Abuse, a parent's guide pamphlet that's attached inside the front of every Cub Scout handbook. So all adults attending that need to review that. If you have unregistered adults, anytime they are with youth other than just their own child or just their own children, they have to be accompanied by a registered adult leader. So another way to maybe think about it is your unregistered adults have to be chaperoned by registered adults, unless that unregistered adult just happens to be with their own child or legal ward. But a lot of times they are in the presence of youth other than just their own. They need to kind of be chaperoned. So again, I would just offer that if folks don't want to necessarily take on a specific leadership role in the unit, but to get them registered so they can attend events and not have to be chaperoned, consider registering them as unit scout or reserve. They have to go through all the youth protection training. They have to go through the background check. They fully qualify as a registered leader in your unit, but they don't actually have to take on a formal role.
Something I remember doing this was that those unregistered parents don't count as your two 21-year-olds on an outing.
They do not count towards your two deep leadership. The two deep leadership requires the adults to be over the age 21 or older, and they must be registered and they must be youth protection trained. So correct. Just having an adult who's unregistered does not suffice and does not count towards your two deep leadership requirement. So get them registered. Unit Scout or Reserve, is a great opportunity to have them registered and meet these requirements, and yet not feel that they have to take on an actual leadership position in either a troop, crew, or even a Cub Scout pack. All right, next slide, please, Josh. And then this is just some reminders specific to youth protection training. First is unit recharter. We are in the midst of charter unit rechartering. It's middle of December, and we've got to get chartering wrapped up. So this is just a general best practice that we really recommend is when your unit is working on rechartering, the best thing to do is if you have any adults whose youth protection training is expiring in the next 30 to maybe even 60 days, have them renew their YPT, even though it's early, have them renew it before you put your charter, submit your charter for renewal. This really helps avoid that while the charter is being processed, avoiding their YPT expiring. Any adults whose YPT has expired cannot be registered in your unit. So now they either have to get their YPT updated so your charter can be processed, or worst case, you may have to even drop them from the roster. And we certainly don't want to drop people from the roster. So again, if you have anyone who's expiring within 30 to 60 days of when your unit is rechartering, ask them to please renew their youth protection training. And this way there's no holdups with anyone's training expiring and holding up the charter being renewed. As far as some YPT resources, first thing I have listed here is the Scouts First Helpline. This is 24-hour helpline. It's to be used if you feel that there's been any kind of youth protection violations that need to be reported, even if there's possibly been suspected a case of abuse, for example. So please make note of this phone number. Put it in your phones, write it down, keep it with you anytime you're with your scouting units. Make sure this number is available to you and any other adults as well. So this number is very important. It's 24 hours a day. So feel free in the event that you have to report something. This is the phone number to call to make those reports. And then I just have websites here, the Youth Protection website. There's also Youth Protection Frequently Asked Questions webpage. So I highly recommend folks check out those web pages. You'll see, the items that I talked about here. You can get more clarification if you need to, but certainly, make those resources available to families as well to help them. And last, Guide to Safe Scouting. I cannot stress the criticality of this. So here, that's the webpage, the live webpage for Guide to Safe Scouting. Please make sure that you're referring to that. frequently, as often as possible, to make sure that your scouting activities that you're doing are in compliance with Scouting America's policies, procedures, and best practices. So Guide to Safe Scouting, absolutely critical as well. That's my presentation. I appreciate it. Josh, unless there's any questions, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Mike. Something I remember with the Scouts First helpline. Um, that's where your first contact is if you think something needs reported. So that's not just youth protection issues. That's also, hey, someone was injured enough that they left my event, or after the event, they went to the emergency room. Like, they decided to do finger carving merit badge and need a stitch. That should be reported in case BSA insurance comes into play. That's your first. And they can tell you, no, this wasn't something we need to know. Have a great day. But that's a 24-hour helpline to make sure that you're covered with any reporting, any insurance things. There was a motor vehicle accident en route between one scouting thing to another. When something might go a big above what you want to be responsible for, that Scout First helpline is your resource.
That's there. And just to add on to that real fast, there's also the concept of incident reporting. We're required under certain circumstances to actually fill out incident reports. So I would refer everyone to the Guide to Safe Scouting that has a section on incident reporting, when it needs to be done, when it should be done, and how to go about doing that. So I would offer that as well. It's not just even calling the helpline. There may be reports that we actually have to file with our local council in certain circumstances, but Guide to Safe Scouting covers that. So check that out on that website.
Hopefully never something we have to bother with. Um,
No, hopefully not.
all right. So looking at our upcoming program opportunities, I wanted to kind of look at what our youth could be doing this winter for some of our packs that are relatively new, or trying to get new membership or new ideas for these cold weather events. Especially because we now have a required outdoor adventure for every single Cub rank or age. Um, that doesn't have to be a true actual hike at a cool hiking spot. If you guys are thinking about doing any outdoor activities, outdoor explorations, that hits lion, tiger, wolf. Just going somewhere, the local town park, and walking around. That pretty much counts as long as you hit the time limit, and the idea is to walk and explore. Bear and Webelos has similar ideas. Bear and Weebelo talk about planning that route more themselves, and 1 mile in the winter can be quite a bit for our youth. But if we, go up to camp for a day, or go to Klondike, or, go to a couple of the others, a lot of time that's, a planned walk. So you can be looking at your outdoor adventures with these winter events. Some are doing on purpose, some are doing just by accident. And our aerolites have to do an overnighter. We can do cabin camping with our overnight. There are cabin campsites at Rotary and Waconomy for you guys to rent. It's very popular with our Cub packs to go to either, especially when it's been snowing a lot. There's much more snow up there, so we can do more of our snow-based activities. Property use for day hikes, and just sitting around doing a campfire or whatever, are free at our properties, but we still need to register for them. If you go on the registration part of the council website, you can find, just I'm going to come for the day for both those, and then rents one of the pavilions or whatever, or a campsite for just a day. And something I try to always, when I've gone out with units, is try to encourage scouts or Cub Scouts to do the outside tent, even in the snow, and they can come back into the cabin when they get too warm, but they can experience that. And even if it's they're hanging out with their friends early in the night, and they come in for the actual sleeping. Yes, both the Rotary cabins and the Lockbottom cabins have heat and electricity. All right. Some more upcoming events. I actually do not know the answer to that, Sarah, so I'll come back to it when I jump off the main topic point here, or someone else wants to grab Sarah's question in chat there. All right, upcoming events. We have our first day hike happening January 1st. There's multiple levels for that. Um, there's a historical hike, there's a cub friendly hike, and then an overlook cliffs hike to look over Albany in the new year. So for Cub Scouts, there's a couple of options there for young, shorter walks. And there'll be a heating station at Seneca with some hot chocolate, and we usually have a pretty strong Cub turnout to the first day hike. There are a couple of Klondike derbies happening January and February. The Cub Yukon happening January 11th will be a full winter fun day at Lawson's Lake for Cubs to come to, separate from the actual Klondike Derby. So absolutely come on out with a couple of Cubs or your entire den or pack. I can't speak to Turning Point's Klondike Derby and what they do for Cub Scouts. During the February school break, NOAA Science is being run at High Rollers Roller Skating. That NOVA Science everywhere is more movement based and more of an active thing. So it'll be great for doing that at that roller skating rink. I believe that's in Latham. And then Cub Scout Winter Fun Day, similar to the Klondike Cub Yukon up in Saratoga on March 8th. Chet, are you aware of anything with the Turning Point if there's Cubs involved with that? I'm going to throw you on the spot.
You're not putting me on the spot. I know there was discussion about including Cubs. Historically, we haven't included Cubs because our troop turnout has been so high. When you're pushing a couple hundred kids and adults through there. I know this year there was talk about it. Last year we had units come and do stuff around the dining hall and under the pavilion area there. They set up some spaces for them to do some stuff there. But really, we'd have to reach out to Bob and see what's going on.
All right, then cancel all that until you hear otherwise. All right. The big event that's happening this spring is a University of Scouting. This is our largest leader training day, March 15th at Shaker High School. If you ever sitting there as an adult leader thinking, I wish someone else could tell me how they're dealing with their problems with getting people to recharter, or how do I get more leaders, or how do I run this type of not adventure, activity, University of Scouting is your go-to. Alongside the leader, there's also the Merit Badge College for our Scouts age, and the Cub Adventures for Webelos and Aerolites Scouts. So that's a big day that'll be happening at March 15th. I'm sure there'll be a couple hundred people there that day, like there was last year. Other adult leader trainings that are happening shortly. Baloo, which is if you want to go camping as a Cub Scout leader, someone needs to have basic outdoor leadership training. I'm forgetting the actual acronym there. At Rotary in February. And I don't think there's another one until the end of spring.
Yeah, Josh, that's basic adult leader outdoor orientation.
There we go. And then Mike will be leading a Den leader specific training in March. And University of Scouting is our adult leader trainings. If you ever need, Sarah, I must have forgotten to go that far in my thing. So May Baloo is happening. I just hadn't written it down. So thank you for correcting me, Sarah. I thought I had this PowerPoint all done nice and great earlier today. And clearly yep, anywho. If you have any needs from council, if you ever need professional support, you ever have a question that needs to be answered, your go-to is going on the council website to the support option, which is will bring you to this link, Fresh Desk, and putting in a ticket. This will send an email to all of our council professionals, and they can reach out to you to the correct person. In previous years, you had to know the right person you needed to email and their first and last name and correct spelling. You had to send an email to them and hoped they were the correct person and they answered you. Now, put this ticket in, and someone will get back to you and figure things out for you. Even if it's another volunteer, you're looking to contact a volunteer, professionals will pass it on to volunteers. So this is your one-stop shop for all help. And if you're looking for more resources for recharter, membership renewal, the website, council website has the tab unit membership renewal. It's fairly easy to find the drop down. And that council contact, the full-time professional helping with recharter and membership renewal is Mark Dorsey. His email's there. You can get a hold of him also by the ticket system. All right. That is all I have for today. I think we got maybe a minute or two left. 4 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone want to take the floor? First, Bill, Chet, Mike, anything we want to bring to go to the order before I open it up to everyone?
Yeah, Josh, looking at the chat, Sarah asked some good questions, especially about, can Cub Scouts go winter camping? So again, I just want to put a plug in. Questions like that are great questions. Check the guide to safe scouting first. That's pretty much where you're going to find most of your information, and it very well might refer you to another area in scouting to get additional information. But those types of questions are the questions you should be asking. Guide to safe scouting. That's why I put that link in there. Has a lot of the information that you might be looking for. So, and I know, Chad, I think you answered that there's no policy. Guide to Safe Scouting is actually silent on whether or not Cub Scouts can winter camp. So the general rule of thumb is if Guide to Safe Scouting is silent or does not specifically mention something, common sense is really the next thing to follow. So considering that at the Scouts BSA level or venturing level, UCPIC is typically needed for winter camping. So we don't have specialized training at the Cub level. So common sense would almost say, yeah, families, especially with Cub Scouts, should not be sleeping outside in the winter. And quite frankly, from my experience, most Cub Scout families don't want to sleep outside in the winter. So probably shouldn't be a problem anyway. But yeah, just another plug for the Guide to Safe Scouting. When you have questions about policies or certain things, check that Guide to Safe Scouting first. And see if it gives you the information, refers you somewhere else, or if it truly is silent, common sense, or even check with the council, get their input as well.
I want to thank everybody for being here because scouting is changing, as we know, and there's all sorts of things changing. And you showing up here indicates the fact that you want to keep on top of what's going on. It's easy just to become frustrated and to put your head down and say, I don't want to deal with it. But coming to these roundtables are very important and will continue to be important for the next couple of years. And I want to thank you for understanding that, being here, and thank you for being able to make these changes, which are making our movement better, make these changes trickle down to everybody who needs to know. So thank you, Josh. Thank you, Chet. And thank you all for being here, staying on top of things because our movement is in transition. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in here lots of great information passed along this evening. So thanks a lot to everyone for disseminating that information out to our leaders. Let's take this information back to our units with a note of something that we touched on right at the end of Josh's presentation. He mentioned rechartering. We've got to get that recharter taken care of. So if your unit has not yet rechartered, this is the most important thing on the docket right now, because all of the things that we covered on this call tonight are null and void if we don't have a unit. So we have to get these recharters taken care of. If there's a holdup, please give Mark Dorsey a call. He's there to help you. He will come to you if that's what's needed. So please take care of that. Thank you very much, everyone, for everything you're doing. Keep it up.
So, Sarah, that's a very good question that you asked. There is a grace period built in. However, after December 31st, recharter becomes a problem. So if you're having issues with recharter, I don't know who has 1083, but I would advise that you reach out to the district leadership or Mark Dorsey directly, and he can help you overcome those challenges. He's worked with several of my units up here in the Turning Point District. He's worked with my scout troop specifically. He is very, very responsive, and he is very, very good at what he does.
Perfect.
All right, Chet, well, do you want to take over the screen share and give
Yes,
your
sure. If you can, you just pass it to me, or
just hit the stop so I
all right,
can.
that's fine. I got it. I
Yep.
got it. I got it. I got it.
I don't know if I can make you in charge of my computer. I hope not. I hope Zoom can't do that.
No, I just got it.
Ugh.
I had it. I had the presentation up, so let me. Okay. Can everybody see my? Can everybody see my screen? All right.
Good, yeah.
So for those of you, so for everybody here, if you were here for the Cub Roundtable, some of this is going to be similar because that's sort of how we do it. Um, help us keep the log roundtable. So that's sort of how we do it. Josh robs from me, I rob from Josh. That's kind of how we do it. So for the Scout Roundtable, we have a very similar agenda: opening and introductions, safety moment training, and upcoming opportunities. Please help us know who attended Roundtable. Please sign on to use this to sign up. We have the same safety minute that we had for the Cub Roundtable with winter activity safety, the cold method. I believe Josh went into it very well. So, and I am going to talk a little bit more about outdoor camping in the winter here in just a minute. So, but take the cold method, make sure that that's what your scouts are following when they're outside. And if you have any questions, make sure that you ask. I know my boys just went sledding this weekend and we had no idea about the helmet. So we just made, they were sledding in an open area and they were fine. We had no idea about the helmet requirement.
Can they
So
just bring their bike helmets that they all have? Is that good enough? Great.
so and then this big thing, fitness. Um more so for the scout leaders at the scout level, we tend to have kids who are older, and we tend to be older and maybe not as in good a shape as the cub parents. So make sure you're physically able to take care of what you're doing outside. The next thing I want to talk about, and Mike, this applies to the Cub Scout program as well. It doesn't just apply to the Boy Scout program. National just recently changed the requirements for hazardous weather training. Hazardous weather training expires every 2 years, every 24 months. It's found on my.scouting. The Guide to Safe Scouting requires that a minimum of one direct contact leader be current in hazardous weather training for all unit types, Cubs and Scouts and Ventures and Sea Scouts. So I would advise everyone to log into my.scouting and check their hazardous weather training date. I know myself personally, I was in there looking at something. I happened to notice, I was looking at my training. I happened to notice that my Scoutmaster trained symbol had gone away. And when I did some digging, I found that my hazardous weather training had expired. So I went and took it. I know it, Bill. I know it, right? Oh my gosh. And it takes about 30 minutes to do it. And it's it's not hard. It's not taxing. It's just one of those things we got to get done to stay current. So I would advise everyone to log in and take a look at that and don't get caught out, especially because it is specifically called out in the Guide to Safe Scouting. So the next thing I want to talk about in the training session is winter camping. I borrowed all of this directly from scouting.org. I'm not the training genius that came up with all this on his own. I'll readily admit that. Borrow and share. That's kind of my motto. But winter camping, we talked a little bit about UKPIC. I would recommend for those in the Scouts BSA program and the venturing program that you take UKPIC. And it follows it follows a lot of these guidelines, right? So for outside camping in the winter, you need to have qualified supervision. So you need to be experienced in the winter. Somebody that that is well-meaning but doesn't understand camping in the cold is going to get scouts, there is going to make scouts unsafe. They're not going to know how to warm a scout up. They're not going to know how to warm themselves up. They're not going to understand hot Nalgene bottles, right? If you've never been exposed to it, you've never thought about it, making a hot Nalgene bottle to put in your sleeping bag with you before you go to bed is something very simple. It helps you stay warm, and in that you'd be surprised at how long an Nalgene stays warm when it's in your sleeping bag with you with your body heat. And that extra little bit, even down by your feet, can make a tremendous difference. Equipment. So this talks about equipment being checked in good condition for the activity, but it also needs to be rated for the activity that you're doing. We found out in November, one of our campouts, that those of us that had 20-degree bags, when the weather got down to 28 degrees, we weren't quite as comfortable as those that had 0-degree bags when the weather got down to 28 degrees. So make sure that not only is the equipment in good condition, but is it rated for what you're wanting to do? Do you need a 20-degree bag, a 0-degree bag, a minus 20-degree bag? Where are you going? What do you need to do? Physical fitness. Both adults and youth should be suitably fit for what you're going to do. Something people don't think about with physical fitness: dehydration in the winter. Okay. You get dehydrated faster in the winter than in the summer, just based on the fact that the light reflects off the snow. You're cold, so you're not drinking. You're exerting yourself, but you're cold, so you're not drinking. But you're exerting yourself, but you're cold, so you're not drinking. And before you know it, before you realize it, you're dehydrated. And you just don't have what it takes. Who chatted? Sleeping bags have an unclear mixed rating, comfortable at 20 or survive. Correct.
Sorry.
That is
I'm
correct,
sorry,
Josh.
Chad.
Yep. Yep, that is correct. Um, so, but physical fitness, the getting dehydrated, you don't realize it. You're out in the snow and you get dehydrated. And before you know it, you have that dehydration headache, or you have that dehydration fog that sets in and you're trying to figure out what's going on. And you just need to plan accordingly, which leads us to our next point, which is planning accordingly. So make sure that your activities are safe and that you've thought about what you're going to do and how you're going to accomplish what it is that you need to do. And if you're away from your camp, you're away from where you're going to be, make sure that you're able to get time to get to where you need to be, by the end of the day. And when we're in this low sunlight period, the end of the day can sneak up on you because it's only 5 o'clock, but it feels like it's midnight, right? Safe areas. So you need to determine whether an area is safe for winter camping and free of hazards. This is another step similar to what they talk about in Baloo and what they talk about in IOLS, and then they talk about again in hazardous weather training, is determining an area for winter camping, or determining an area for camping in general, and making sure there are no, we like to call them widow makers, making sure there are no widow makers, there are no falling trees, there are no jagged rocks underneath the snow where you're going to put your stuff. So you make sure that the area is well suited. Weather check. Make sure most everybody has cell phones. Most everybody has weather apps. Make sure you do a weather check prior to going out so that you can understand what to expect and make sure that you have the right gear. Or do you need to postpone? When you're going out in the wintertime, the last thing that anybody wants is to get caught in some sort of storm or some sort of condition where nobody is safe and it's not safe to evacuate, right? So you're out in the weather, you can't get warm, and it's not safe to evacuate. So make sure that you do that weather check prior to leaving. Burning. See, as I read this today, I thought to myself, well, it's kind of common sense to not use flames in tents. But then it went on to talk about teepees or snow shelters. And there are tents out there that can handle small wood stoves, and there are teepees that are set up for small stoves or small fire pits. BSA rules never use flames in tents, teepees, or snow shelters. It has as much to do with burning the place down as it does to carbon monoxide poisoning. Because they also talk about not just flames, but they talk about the chemical reactive ones that don't have flames that they don't want you using in tents. So there's more to this than just using flames in tents. And then discipline. Not discipline is when you're thinking about somebody who's not following the rules for being bad, but discipline as in rules for the outing. You're going on a winter camp out, everybody needs to be on the same page. So having them on the same page can mean that you need to have a set of rules that the SPL or the scout in charge of the outing are using to make sure that everybody stays safe, that everybody is doing their part, and that everybody is able to have a good time. You can find out more information on this and on winter events at scouting.org under health and safety and the guide to safe scouting. Going to move. Does anybody have any questions before I move on? How many people are still here? A good amount. No questions? Anybody got a good joke? John, you're muted.
Not that can be used in a meeting that is being taped, but
Oh.
I mean, I guess the biggest question is and we tried to use the winter camp out is picking a date and figuring out what the scouts want to do. You never know. I mean, we've had winters with no snow, and then we've had winters with extreme snow conditions and such.
Right.
And so, we've tried to make everybody happy, but sometimes you just error on safety. It's just we had we were going to stay over at after a Klondike 3 or 4 years ago, and we just decided that it was in nobody's best interest to do it. And while the kids are disappointed, they hopefully will grow up and into scout leaders, understand that we're doing what we do for the best for them.
Right. And I really recommend that if you haven't taken it, take UKPIC. I know at least up here in our area, Dave Hoffman teaches it. He's very passionate about it. I know several people that have gone. It's a great course. Great course.
Chet, how does any of this apply if we're lazy people and are renting heated cabins? Especially what Mike said about segregation by gender and by age. How does this relate to cabin camping in the winter?
So for cabin camping, it's harder. Segregating in a cabin, depending on the size, can be very difficult. What we do with my unit is we will set it up so that adults are on one side of the cabin and youth are on the other side of the cabin. And that's about the best that we can do. Try to put some barriers in between, but that's about the best that you can do. The cabin that we stayed in, we just stayed in a cabin Friday night, actually had bunk beds. So we were able to use that in the middle. So the boys were on one side and me and the other leader were on the other. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, Chet, to just build on that a little bit and Bill, that's a great question. So in a cabin, the best extent possible, you still want to create that segregation. As Chet said, even if it's separating the males from the females, and then even going one step further, separating the adults from the youth. It could even be hanging blankets or tarps. Anytime I went cabin camping, I always made sure to bring some oversized tarps, and we hung tarps. I typically, if I had a cabin, it was at Rotary. In a lot of cases, there was already the rope or something strung up in the ceilings from some other activity. But if not, I always found a way, to get some rope up there, and even if it's just hanging a tarp or a blanket, it's not ideal. It's not a permanent barrier, but it's something. So you want to do as much as you possibly can to try to accommodate that.
Yeah, and a lot of the cabins out there, at least the ones at the main cabins at Walk and like Jeff Lodge at Rotary, you hanging a blanket. Jeff Lodge might be easier than the cabins at Walk, but hanging a blanket up can be kind of tedious. But like Seneca Lodge is great because it's so big, and you could actually section it in a couple different ways if you're staying in there with a mixed unit. But when it's just, I have a boys only troop. When we go camping, we just really work to keep the leaders on one side of the cabin, the boys on the other side of the cabin, keep all the cooking stuff in the middle so that if anybody's up moving about, you hear it, so it's in the middle. Um, and that's, it's about the best you can hope for.
I just wanted to note a female leader in a boys troop, so I invested in a cot tent, which is a little expensive, but I loved it. It's just this footprint of a cot, but it has a privacy tent over it. So I used that this weekend, and it was great.
Yeah, this is Dean. The units are responsible for compliance with youth protection. And as Chet said, some of the cabins are better than others. Directors at Wakpanami is the only one that's probably almost compliant. All the rest, you're going to have to cobble together, tarps, partition, blanket, etc. It's something that we're always struggle with to try to figure out what to do to, keep the separation, but yet keep exits fully accessible, etc.
Right,
remember,
right.
To keep your exits fully accessible, etc. And, the other thing, obviously, when we're talking about winter camping is stay the hell off of any water body until you're absolutely certain or somebody tells you it's safe.
Shower tent. That's a good idea.
Yep.
That's a great idea, Josh. Getting a shower tent.
Yep.
That one's from Tim Sweet.
Yeah.
I was going to ask Tim I was going to ask Greg how they do it on the ship, how they separate out on the ship.
I was gonna say that you know, come with me where we sleep 8 in a space that accommodates 5, and you'll never complain about segregating out a cabin again.
So, okay. Any other questions or comments anybody would like to make? Okay. So the upcoming events, a lot of this is going to be the repeat of what Josh talked about. First day hike at Rotary in January, the Cub Derby in Cub Yukon on January 11th at Lawson's Lake, Nova Shoot January 20th at High Rollers roller skating rink, Turning Point Klondike February 8th at Walk. There's an ice fishing tournament February 15th at Walk. We're going to be doing a fire safety merit badge at the Museum of Firefighting in February and skating merit badge at High Rollers in February. Order the Arrow, the Lodge Vigil Breakfast is February 22nd. I think there's more. I don't think the information is up on that yet. I'm not quite sure where it's going to be. Typically, the Lodge one, I'm not sure. I know they've done stuff in Saratoga, but I'm not sure where they'll do this one. Adult leader training, Ukpik, as it's pronounced. There's a silent O in there for us Midwesterners, Ukpik. Yes, Mike Linger.
Yeah, Chad, just to point out, so that just a plug for a training that's missing. February 8th is a Saturday. I'm doing Scouts BSA leader training, and that covers merit badge counselor, troop committee chair, troop committee member, and Scoutmaster, assistant Scoutmaster. So
Perfect.
Maybe, I don't know if we want to update the slide before we post it or what, but yeah, February 8th is Scouts BSA leader training, and that registration is actually live. So folks can start registering for that.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. So back to adult leader training. Ook pick, like I said, that silent O for us Midwesterners. Winter camping, it's January 11th to 12th at WAC. Our friend Josh is teaching wilderness first aid, March 8th and 9th at WAC. And then University of Scouting. And in addition to all this great stuff at University of Scouting, if you would like to be a unit commissioner someday, some way, somehow, if you would like to be a unit commissioner, we will be doing unit commissioner basic at University of Scouting. And then we will be having a commissioner get together some point in there too. Bill?
Commissioner Fellowship after that. And then there's going to be, so there's a whole new record keeping on how to keep track of unit metrics. And that will be unveiled, and we'll go into that. So since JTE is done, there's a new thing that's that's just been released in December, and we'll be going over that.
So, but I would highly encourage you to get your scouts, take a look at the Merit Badge College if the information is available, get your scouts signed up for that. I forget the total number of scouts that went to that. Maybe Josh remembers last year, total number of scouts that went to the Merit Badge College.
About 100, I think.
Yeah.
To answer a quick question, registration is not open yet for the Merit Badge counselor, or both, because they're still recruiting volunteers. So the exact courses are still a little bit up in the air. That should be coming out in January, I think is what I talked with Cheryl last week with. So we should see that up really soon for registration, and you'll start seeing it promoted everywhere.
Yeah, registration can't really happen until we know which courses you want to, and that meeting is actually happening Tuesday if you want to keep track.
Good.
I
Stacey?
have a question about the ice fishing. It says tournament, so that sort of implies that you've been ice fishing and are now at the competitive level. Okay. No? The next question is, should units have their own auger and different ice fishing accessories that ice fishers tend to have already?
I believe they have all that at WAC.
Okay.
I believe they have all that at WAC.
Okay,
because
so if
we do this every year. We do
have
this
never
ice fishing.
ice fished, you could still go.
Yeah, we do this ice fishing every year at WAC, so they got to have it there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
If you ever have questions about an event, there's an event contact in the calendar that may be able to tell you very specific program questions. It's perfect for that person. So if you want to do above and beyond,
But we do ice fishing at WAC, and they have to have all the stuff because it's not reasonable to expect the units to have all the stuff. So, what do we got here? Is there information about the first day hike specifics? Yeah, I know it's at Rotary. There has been posts on the Facebook page, and didn't it hit one of the emails, one of the council emails, one of the weeklies? So, so again, if you need help, contact Fresh Desk, and then recharter. So, for those that don't know, you can go to the council website, and every district has a generic district email. And you can send an email using that email address, and it will go to your district commissioner and your district chair and several unnamed people at council who may or may not respond to you. But your district commissioner and or district chair generally will be very responsive to that email. So if you have any questions, recharter or otherwise, you can reach out to them through that method.
The other thing I would just simply add to that, Chet, about recharter is that the common response I've received from folks I've been talking to about rechartering is, oh, I don't handle that. Someone else handles that. And if that's your thought right now, you're sitting here and listening and you're like, no, Bill, Bob, Mary Sue, whoever takes care of that, reach out to them and give them the information if they're not on this call, right? Reach out to them and say, hey, do you need a hand? Because we talked about this on Roundtable and there's a couple resources that you might find helpful, right? Don't just say, well, someone else is going to take care of it, because that's what I've been hearing a lot. So I'd love to just, work as a community here and get that word to the folks who you think are taking care of it. Because when you reach out to them, they may say, oh,
hey, Josh, I need you to, all right, hold on. Josh, I need you to run the rest of this. I got a work call I got to take.
Gotcha. So maybe when you reach out to them, they're not even aware that they're the person who's been tagged to take care of it. And that's why it hasn't been done yet. But just take this information back to your units, really make sure that they understand the urgency that it really is important that we take care of this in a timely manner.